إن الدين عند الله الإسلام.
Mr. Khan is a member of the New York City Bar Association and New York County Lawyers Association. Mr. Khan received his JD from Harvard Law School, where he was an editor of the Harvard Law and Policy Review, and his BA in Politics and Philosophy from Brandeis University. I invited Mr. Khan to present in front of us what is our rights, and after that, after his presentation, inshallah, if you have any question, you can ask the question and Mr. Khan will reply that question. Mr. Khan.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for coming out at this late hour on a Saturday night to talk about what I know is not the most exciting topic. It's not the most entertaining topic, but it's a very important topic. And it's one we've been thinking a lot about lately. And that is, what are the rights of the Muslim community? What are the rights you can exercise in your daily life? How can you respond when you face harassment and discrimination? And most importantly, what are the threats we see on the horizon from the Trump administration? As I'm sure all of you know, the President of the United States is no fan of the Muslim community. For quite some time now, he has built his popularity by attacking the Muslim community and by attacking our country's proudest traditions of religious freedom. Shortly after taking office, he enacted what we at CARE call his Muslim ban. It was an attempt to restrict immigration from Muslim-majority countries. It is one that we fought in court along with civil rights groups like the ACLU, with state attorneys generals, and with countless others. And we were able to successfully fight back and to enjoin the first Muslim ban. Now we have a second Muslim ban that the president tried to enact only a couple weeks ago. Actually, less than that. And right now we have litigation that once again is blocking the implementation of this discriminatory, unlawful, and un-American ban. So, as I speak to you today, the Muslim ban does not affect us. It doesn't affect any Americans. It is not law. It is not, if any official, whether with ICE or CBP or any other government official, tried to enact that Muslim ban, if they tried to enforce it, they would go to jail. And so today we have the protections of the court standing against the implementation of the law. But that could change. And so it is very important that each and every one of you sign up for our mailing list so you can keep up to date with the latest developments, because I cannot tell you what will come in the next week or two. I don't know what the appellate courts will say. I don't know what the appeals will say. So I want to pass around a mailing list here, a sign-up sheet. And if you could pass this around and make sure as many people sign up as possible, because we know you are going to hear rumors. There are so many WhatsApp groups and mailing lists, text messages from a friend of a friend telling you what's going on, and we know that there's a lot of fear because a lot of the time, these rumors are not truth. These rumors are spreading fear far and wide, and we want to make sure that you are getting accurate information. So if you're not getting it from CARE New York, please follow the ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Center for Constitutional Rights, or one of the other groups that is trying to get information out to the community. So if the Muslim ban goes into effect, if the injunction is overruled, what will happen? Well, the Muslim ban did not affect most Muslims in the United States. It applied to 6 countries, and only 6 countries. It applied originally to 7, but they took Iraq off the list. Under the current Muslim ban, it applies to Iran, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Yemen. I believe I got My apologies. I believe that's Sudan, yes. And so if you hold a passport from one of those 6 countries, you are affected. But if you hold a United States passport and are from that country originally, you're not impacted by the ban. If you have 2 passports, and one of them is from one of those 6 countries and one is from another country, you are not impacted. The new ban is very narrow in who it impacts. It doesn't impact anyone with a current visa, for example. It doesn't impact anyone who already had status or was already in the US. The new ban, Muslim Ban 2.0, only is targeted at those individuals who are applying for a new visa or potentially a renewed visa. This is because the Trump administration lost so badly in court. This is a real victory for the US Constitution, that the judges were so quick to push back, and the Trump administration now, what they're doing now is still illegal, but it only is affecting a narrow segment of the community. So if the ban goes into effect, again, if we're overruled and you are from one of those 6 countries, you may not be impacted if you already have a visa. But out of an abundance of caution, we are asking you, please speak to an immigration lawyer before planning a trip out of the country if you have a visa from one of those 6. You know, the new Muslim ban is much narrower, but it is very important that you avoid anything that might jeopardize your rights. Because we know they will use every loophole and technicality they can to deprive Muslim Americans of their citizenship and of their visas. So right now I want to go through how to interact with airport security officials, because that's one area where we saw some of the most obscene abuses against the Muslim community. We saw individuals being coerced to give up their green cards. We saw individuals being harassed and handcuffed for hours. And so it's very important to know what your rights are at the airport. When you're coming in from overseas, from outside the country, you don't have the same rights that you have sitting in here today. Our Constitution gives Customs and Border Patrol broad discretion at the border. And even US citizens lose some of their rights. But one thing that everyone always has the right to do, and it doesn't matter if you're a US citizen or from or a visa holder or a green card holder or anything else, if someone is telling you to sign a document at the airport, you have the right to say no, and you have the right to demand a lawyer. And the reason that is very important is because we've seen tricks. We've seen tricks where people said, oh, sign this form, it's minor. And they signed away their green card. We saw tricks where people were told, don't bother reading the document, it's not important. Where people were given documents in English, or even though they weren't comfortable reading it in English. You would not buy a house without having a lawyer look over the deed, without looking over the contract. You shouldn't sign anything impacting your visa, impacting your green card, without having a lawyer there. So it's very important at the airport, you have the right to simply say, I want an attorney, if they ask you to sign. Now, for the rest of this airport segment, I'm going to have to differentiate between US citizens and everyone else. Because the unfortunate reality is that while US citizens have fewer rights at the airport, non-citizens have even less. And I know it can get confusing, but I want it to be clear. After I'm done with the airport segment, everything I say will be the same for citizens and non-citizens. There is no difference between my rights standing in here today and the rights of someone who is undocumented or has a visa when it comes to our Fourth Amendment rights, when it comes to our First Amendment rights, when it comes to the majority of our constitutional rights. But at the airport, in that one time, there is an important difference. If you are a US citizen and you are at the airport, we know that Muslim citizens are asked invasive questions at a much higher rate. We know that they're taken to something called secondary inspection, where they're asked, where all their belongings are gone through, where all their devices are taken out, where they're really probed for a variety of things. But then they're oftentimes asked questions like, well, where do you go to pray? What are your political beliefs? What do you think about this event or that event? If you are a US citizen, you have the right to say, I choose to remain silent. You have the right to invoke that Fifth Amendment guarantee to remain silent if you don't want to answer. It may delay you. It may annoy the CBP official, but that is your right to simply say, I choose to remain silent. Personally, as an attorney, I always exercise that right when I have the option. I always say, I will remain silent. But that's your choice. And today, I'm not trying to give you guidance on what you should or shouldn't do. I'm simply trying to tell you what your rights are. And that is your right if you're a US citizen. If they ask for your cell phone or your computer or any other electronic device at the airport, you are required to give it to them. That is what the law says. But the law does not require you, if you're a US citizen, to hand over the password. If your device is encrypted and they want the password, you can say no if you're a US citizen, and there's nothing they can do about it. If you're a US citizen and you say no, there is no law you have broken, no crime you have committed, they need a court order before any jeopardy attaches. This means it's important to have strong encryption on your device if you want it to remain secure. And part of it is turning off the fingerprint sensor, because they have the right to make you unlock your device with your fingerprint. But they don't have the right to have you, to force you to enter a code or a combination. It's a silly distinction, but it's one that courts have made clear. Unfortunately, if you're not a US citizen and you do any of these things, you refuse to answer questions that you think are inappropriate, if you refuse to hand over the password to your device or your social media account, unfortunately, that can come at a price. For non-citizens, you can be denied entry to the United States, even green card holders, if they choose to exercise that right to remain silent. So that is the one area where it is important to know the difference, where it's important to highlight the difference between US citizens and non-citizens. For everything else I say from this point forward, it is exactly the same. And one thing that is exactly the same between US citizens and non-citizens is that the police can lie to us. The police can lie to us, and the airport officials can lie to us, CBP can lie to us, ICE can lie to us, TSA can lie to us. Just because a police officer says, trust me, you have to do X, doesn't mean it's so. And we know that people are lied to by the police all the time. The reason why this is so unjust is that if you lie to the police, if you lie to a federal law enforcement officer, it is a felony. You can go to jail for up to 8 years simply for making a lie to a federal law enforcement official. It's a law we call 18 USC 1001. And it is a very serious offense. It is something that is a very dangerous tool in the hands of law enforcement, because even if you've never done anything wrong, even if you're not trying to to cover up a misdeed, if you've done everything right and you simply forget a fact and make a lie, if you say, oh, I never met so-and-so, and you forget that you met them 5 years ago, you have just committed a felony. And we see people prosecuted for this all the time. And it's not just within the community. As many of you may remember, Martha Stewart went to jail for a number of years. They tried to find evidence that she was committing insider trading. They couldn't. But they did say that she had lied to an FBI agent, and that was enough to put her in prison. This is why it's very important to have a lawyer with you anytime you are speaking to the police. Because if you forget, if you are sloppy in how you use language, if you exaggerate, you may have just committed a crime, even though you never did anything wrong before. We always urge people to contact us at CARE if you are contacted by law enforcement and don't already have an attorney. We provide our legal services free of charge as a service to the community. And it's made possible by the generosity of the community in turn. And I want everyone to take a card that I have up here. This card has instructions on what to do if you are visited at home by FBI or NYPD intelligence. Very simple rules that I'll go over in a second. It can be uncomfortable when they come to your door. You can feel anxious, you can feel uncertain. And we want to make it as simple as possible for you to know what to do step by step right here. And it has our number so you can get in touch afterwards. So if we could pass these out, that would be really great. So what happens when an FBI agent comes to your door? What do? You don't have to say much. You don't have to recite the Constitution. All you have to do is this. Ask them to slip their business card under the door and tell them that your lawyer will be in touch. You don't have to say why you have a lawyer. You don't have to say why you're invoking your right to remain silent. You don't have to do any of those things. And honestly, the less you say, the better. Sometimes people get carried away. They go on this rambling speech about why they're invoking the Constitution and how important it is. You don't want to do any of that. Because given the risks, given the dangers of any misstatement to the FBI, the less communication without a lawyer, the better for most people. So, again, you just ask them to give you their card. You don't give them anything of yours. You slip it under the door, so you don't even open the door for them to look inside, because even that can cause problems down the road. And you have them say that your lawyer will be in touch. And if you don't have a lawyer, please contact us at CARE. We handle a large volume of these cases. The weekend before the presidential election, CARE received over 140 calls from individuals who were visited by the FBI. FBI agents looking into a terrorism attack that never happened, but one that they used as a basis to really terrify hundreds of people across the country. I don't know how many people were visited. I only know how many people called us. And it is very disturbing to us that people are receiving these visits, people who have done nothing wrong, because it chills their ability to go about their lives in peace, to simply go to work, to go to school, to do what they want to do, and to live with that freedom and openness that so many take for granted. So please, if you are ever visited by the FBI, don't wait a day, don't wait an hour, call immediately. The longer you wait, the worse it will get. There's one exception to when you have to open the door, and it's very rare. And that is when an officer has a warrant. A warrant is an order signed by a judge. If it's an FBI agent, it will be a federal judge. If it's NYPD, it may be a state judge. And it is an order that says they have the right to search your home. If they say, I have a warrant, ask them to slip it under the door as well. You have the right to read it. You have the right to make sure that the address on the warrant is the same as your address. All the time, people have searches where they go next door, they go across the street, they go to the wrong house. And it takes hours to clear up the confusion, sometimes months. So look at the warrant itself. Make sure it has the right address, make sure the dates are right. And most importantly, make sure it's signed by a judge. A warrant signed by an FBI agent is just a piece of paper. A warrant must be signed by a judge. If they have a warrant and it has the right address, it is signed, you have to let them in. And you must not interfere with the search. If you do, it is a very serious crime called obstruction of justice. You may not have done anything wrong, but if you are interfering with an FBI search, you're now in serious trouble. So if they have a warrant, let them in, but you have the right to record. We all have, the phones in our pockets are one of the most powerful tools in leveling the playing field between FBI agents and members of the public. So if there is a search, make sure you record it, and also make sure you call a lawyer. Again, time is of the essence. The longer you wait, the more harm is done. There are also warrants that are issued for the arrest of an individual. You have to, if there's a warrant and it says that it's arresting an individual on it, then the procedure is slightly different. Rather than letting them into your home, you can simply step out of the house. If you're inside the house when they make an arrest, they have the right to look around. If you're outside the house when they make the arrest, there's no such right. And to best preserve your rights, if they have an arrest warrant, simply step outside and immediately invoke your right to remain silent and your right to an attorney. It's important, if you are ever arrested, to preserve your rights as best you can. Because oftentimes cases aren't built on the investigation leading up to an arrest, they're built on the statements made after the arrest happens. It's a very similar procedure. Oh, and I want to make clear, the same rules apply to ICE. If you are undocumented and ICE comes to your home, they cannot enter without a warrant. The United States Constitution says the right of the people to be secure in their houses. It doesn't say the right of citizens. It doesn't say the right of lawful visas. It is the right of all people. And if you are out of status, do not think that you have to simply let ICE into your home. You have the right to demand a warrant. And ICE in particular is notorious for pretending to have a warrant when they don't have one. So make sure to check the fine print. If you are in a car and you're stopped by the police, the most important thing is your safety. We know that every year hundreds of people are either killed or shot or wounded during traffic stops. People face a lot of lifelong injuries because of confusion and anxiety. If you speak to a police officer, they will say the thing that they are most scared of is what happens during a traffic stop gone awry. So the most important thing to do is to put the police officer at ease. That doesn't mean waiving your rights, but that means being calm, it means being polite, and most importantly, it means not having any surprises. Simply, when I'm stopped, I like to have my registration, my license available in a place that's easy to get to. If it's in the glove compartment, that's not as good. Someplace on the dashboard is fine. You simply have your hands someplace visible, like on the steering wheel, and you do not move them without asking permission. If you need to get an insurance document that's in the glove compartment, you don't suddenly reach over to it. You say, "Officer, is it okay for me to reach into the glove compartment?" And then you wait for them to respond, and then you slowly, very slowly, reach over. This can save your life. It really is that serious. There are a lot of cops out there who are very fearful of people of color, very fearful of Muslim men in particular. They see your faith through the lens of national security, through the lens of Fox News and people like the sort of things that Donald Trump says. We have to be very cautious in responding at this moment to make sure that people don't suffer because of that fear. If they ask you to leave your car, you will leave the car. But if they ask anything else, if they ask to look around the car, if they ask to look in the trunk, if they ask for your consent to search, you have the right to say no. They need a warrant to conduct that search. They can't simply just pop your trunk. We want to make sure that people remain safe, but again, being safe and being careful doesn't mean that you consent to everything they do. As with a search of your home, you have the right to record it. And as with your home, that video camera can be very helpful in leveling the playing field between you and the police officer. Because in court, judges still prefer the testimony of cops over members of the general public. So if you're harassed or if they say anything inappropriate, it's much easier to prove it when you have the video camera. With all of the situations I've gone through, these are ways you can assert your rights. And if you do it, it should be respected. But we know that cops don't always follow the rules, that CBP doesn't always follow the rules. If you face harassment about your religion, if you face discrimination, if people fail to respect your rights when you assert them, there's not much you can do in the moment. But we can help. We can file lawsuits, we can reach out to civil rights watchdogs, we can fight back and document the scope of abuses. Because time after time, we are told that, well, the Muslim community complains about there being a lot of harassment, but we don't see the reports. They will say this. CBP says this. We know how many Muslim travelers are harassed at the airports, but they claim that it doesn't happen because they don't have the reports. Reaching out to us, giving us the information, empowers us to document the pattern of discrimination against the community. If every complaint, if every incident of bias and harassment were documented, there would be no way for them to deny the reality we see on the ground. And that goes beyond police encounters. One thing we work strenuously to do at CARE is to help victims of anti-Muslim hate crimes. For years, the community has been targeted and often suffered in silence. We know from anecdotes, from meetings like this, that there are countless people who have faced hate crimes, who have faced bigotry, who have faced harassment, but have never felt comfortable saying what happened to them. We want to make sure that each and every one of these crimes is reported to help make sure that there is justice for victims, to help make sure that we deter those who think they can get away with it, and most importantly, to help the community show the pattern, because there is a clear pattern, but one that the numbers do not reflect. You know, I myself am Jewish, and I know that within the Jewish community, we are very good about reporting these crimes, and it has helped us document the scale of anti-Semitism and help get the resources necessary to fight back and protect certain institutions. You know, we want to make sure that every time a masjid is vandalized, that it is front page news, that every time someone is attacked, that we can make sure that the Hate Crimes Task Force knows about it. And this will be part of a long-term project to make sure that anti-Muslim crimes are treated as a priority by the NYPD and by police across the state. Now, if you're not comfortable reporting it directly, we have ways of reporting it anonymously. So please come to us. I'm begging you. This is indispensable for us as we fight to get all of the resources we need to fight anti-Muslim hate crimes. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I'm going to stop there and open it up.
إن الدين عند الله الإسلام